There's always been a link between British docks and Japanese cars. Before the 1960s, many of the cars on Japan's roads were dispatched from Britain's docks. The trickle of Japanese cars came back into those self-same docks in the 1960s to chuckles of derision from the British motor industry. But soon the trickle became a flood, and the British were forced to ask for a temporary gentleman's agreement limiting imports. It certainly saved the bacon of the British motor industry. Well, now the wheel has come to full circle, and once again there's lines of Japanese cars at the ports. But this time they're not awaiting customs clearance for entry to Britain. They're built in Britain and they're waiting for export to Europe. In December, the Toyota factory in Derbyshire came on stream with this car, which is the latest to join those lines at the dockside. It's the Carina E. E for excellence in Europe, they tell us, and exports will take 60% of production. The car features the familiar oily, smooth, flowing lines exhibited by most of the new crop of Japanese cars. Carina comes as a 5-door hatchback or as a 4-door saloon. They're both significantly bigger than the old model, not only longer and slightly wider, but also significantly higher, and that's good news for headroom. They paid a great deal of attention to airflow over the car and the way the panels meet. The result is a good CD figure and little wind noise at speed. Under the anonymous skin, there's some interesting technical stories. Now you can choose from a range of 1.6 or 2-litre petrol engines. There's also a 2-litre diesel unit. But the most interesting engine is the 1.6 petrol fitted to the manual car. Now Toyota describe it as one of the most advanced engines in the world. But aside from the specification, twin overhead camshafts, 16 valves, fuel injection, once exotic, but today almost commonplace, it's notable for being a lean burn unit. Now, when the industry was stampeded into fitting catalysts to clean up the exhaust systems, many of the engineers argued that they were being forced down the wrong road by the legislators. A catalyzed engine uses more petrol and it emits more CO2 into the atmosphere. That's the greenhouse gas. Now, they argued that lean burn was a much better way to go. If you use less fuel, then you emit less CO2 and you put out fewer emissions. Trouble is, it's very difficult to get an engine to run smoothly when, in effect, you're starving it of fuel. Now, Toyota say they've cracked the problem by the use of sophisticated sensors and engine management systems. Up to 87 miles an hour on light to medium throttle, this unit runs as a lean burn engine, giving 10% better economy than a conventional engine. When you go over 87 or demand maximum power, it becomes a normal injected engine with a catalyst cleaning up the exhaust. Inside, it's pretty austere with a nasty shiny black plastic top to the dashboard that can reflect in the windscreen. It really wouldn't be a Japanese car without a superb RDS radio cassette stereo unit and a high level of equipment. There's power steering, power windows, mirrors, headlamp adjustment and of course central locking. There's certainly more room in the car than the old model, but despite height and lumbar support adjustment on the driver's seat, it's quite uncomfortable over long distances. The rear seat passengers get more knee and foot space, the seat has a split fold and it can be locked in position from the boot for better security. It's certainly a clinically efficient car. It handles and rides well and it shows safe and secure road-holding qualities. Just it doesn't have a lot of soul. In their desire to make it completely acceptable to European markets and to the fleet operators, they seem to have ironed out individuality. against its declared target cars of the Mondeo and the Cavalier, the Carina equipped itself well. Performance figures for this 1.6 in particular are impressive against the competition. At the end of the day, of course, the big question is, can the British screw these cars together with the same degree of quality and reliability as their Japanese counterparts? Well, Nissan's experience in Sunderland certainly suggests that the answer to that question is an emphatic yes.
In the last series, we did an item on car selling agencies and seemed to have caused a bit of a stir. They're a sort of automotive estate agents. You pay a fee up front to sell your car. Some of them even promise to sell it for you. Trouble is, you've been ringing and writing in telling us that some of these agencies haven't been doing that, and once you've paid the fee, usually 50 quid, you rarely hear another word. We have a file thick with complaints from viewers claiming they've been ripped off. And the police, the RAC and trading standards officers around the country also tell us they have files of complaints. The Office of Fair Trading has warned car sellers to be on their guard. We even had 2 calls from people who used to work for selling agencies and took a dim view of their employers. Our moles told us that their company's methods included the hard sell, empty promises about ready buyers, wild claims about advertising that never took place, and more seriously it transpired that these companies are tape recording your conversations in an attempt to make them into a legal and binding contract. Only some agencies use tape recording, but one that did is Motorlink. 6 of our complaints were about this particular company. Tracy Reed from Guildford had an unhappy experience with them. She was approached by them when she advertised her Fiesta XR2. She agreed on the phone to use their service, but didn't give them a credit card number, and they also promised her that she could cancel by the following morning if she wanted. After sleeping on the idea, Tracy reckoned that perhaps Motorlink wasn't the way to sell her car after all. Despite repeated attempts, she was unable to get through before the morning deadline, but she did get through later on in the day, but was told by Motorlink that she'd missed the cancellation deadline and would have to pay the £50 fee. Tracy wasn't too pleased about that. Motorlink then followed up Tracy's call with a letter. It said, when you registered your vehicle with Motorlink, the registration was tape recorded, and that unless we receive payment within 7 days of receiving this letter, then your file will be passed for litigation. Tapes of the conversations, it continued, would be produced as evidence. Tracy was sent letters of increasing severity, culminating in one which threatened legal action, complete with a very official-looking copy of a county court summons. 3.5 months and 7 letters later, Motorlink then wrote to Tracy saying they would settle for 20 quid. Tracy ignored the letter and has heard nothing since. Now, Liverpool Trading Standards officers want a mandatory 7-day cooling-off period for services sold by unsolicited phone calls, same as legislation that exists for unsolicited callers on your doorstep. But for those of you who have paid a selling agency with a credit card, there is one ray of hope. Paul Whiffin of Essex was contacted by Vehicle Sales UK when he was advertising his Escort.
Vehicle Sales UK promised me that they had 2 interested buyers who wanted to see my car on the weekend. I agreed with them that should this not happen, then my Barclaycard bill would be ripped up and it would not appear on my statement. However, come Monday morning, obviously nothing had happened, and I then telephoned them in vain over the following week to get absolutely no response, together with a complete denial that such a refund would ever have been promised. So following that, I spoke to Barclaycard, who sent me a detailed questionnaire, and I filled that in, and they granted me a full refund.
Barclaycard say that when a merchant signs up for one of their cards, if the goods or services offered aren't up to the standard agreed between the merchant and the cardholder, then the money will be returned to the cardholder. Paul proved successfully to Barclaycard that he hadn't received the goods he was promised from his selling agency. And there's more good news. Berkshire Trading Standards have successfully prosecuted 2 individuals, Deborah Sheedy, trading as Vehicle Sales UK, and Mark Roebuck, trading as Information Marketing Services.
In the case of Information Marketing Services, they sent out invoices when all the customers asked for was information on the service. Consequently, they were prosecuted under the Unsolicited Goods and Services Act. In the case of Vehicle Sales UK, people were persuaded to part with their Barclaycard access numbers on the pretext that they had customers waiting in their area. When we examined the records of Vehicle Sales UK, they had no such prospective buyers in the customer's area at all. Consequently, they were prosecuted under the Trade Description Act.
What of the future for consumers with agencies like this?
We will continue to look at complaints, and if there are breaches of criminal legislation, we will prosecute. But as far as we're concerned, they are running a directory by running these databases. And in order to put entries onto directories and charge for it, there's got to be a note of agreement between the two parties. If there is no note of agreement, that is a criminal offence.
Now, we're not suggesting that all car selling agencies are dodgy, or saying that the amount of complaints we received form a large proportion of their customer base. But we have heard from some pretty outraged punters. It's common sense, really. If you're paying money up front for services you're supposed to receive later from some bloke you don't know, it pays to be a bit careful. Think very hard before agreeing to anything over the telephone, especially if it involves giving over your credit card number. And make sure that any promises you're given are put in writing.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This weekend sees the start of the Mobile 1 Top Gear British Rally Championship. We'll be covering all 5 rounds, starting with the Vauxhall Rally of Wales this weekend. You can keep up to date with the action by ringing our rally hotline on 0891 333 404.